Hi guys, and welcome to Escape with Watch Reviews. My name is Steve, and today we're looking at the new Cronos Skyline model L6028m. I purchased this watch during the last sale, but my reviews are going to stay 100% honest no matter how I get a watch. And if by the end of this review you want to pick one of these up, I'll be leaving a link down in the video description that takes you right to the Cronos official store on AliExpress. That is an affiliate link. If you guys use that link, you don't pay any extra. I'll just earn a little bit of commission that helps keep the channel running and lets me get in watches like this. The retail price for this watch is about $225 US. That's before any taxes or coupons or anything like that. And like I said, I did purchase it during the last sale, and I got it for right around $165 US. So with some patience, you can score some pretty big discounts on these things. The watch comes in 3 different colorways that you can see here. I think they all look pretty good, but I do think the blue is the way to go. The watch case and bracelet are made of 316L stainless steel. It has a sapphire crystal with AR coating, a screw-down crown, screw-down case back, 100 meters of claimed water resistant. It has Swiss Superluminova on the dial and the hands, and the watch is powered by the PT5000 automatic movement. So we have been getting some good integrated bracelet watches this year, and I say that with these two sitting right next to me here. But I have to say, this one here, right out of the box, gave me the biggest wow factor. And now that I've had it on the wrist for a few days, what are my final thoughts? I say we dig in. Well, let's find out. But before we do, I say we do a quick wrist check today. This is the IXDAO 5303 on a smooth FKM strap. Absolutely loving this watch still. I haven't worn it very much lately, but I still really do like it when I do wear it. Okay, well, let's talk about the dimensions. 38.7 millimeters across, about 39.5 diagonal. Case thickness is 10.4 millimeters. The bracelet starts at 23.2 millimeters and tapers down to 16 millimeters at the clasp. I'm going to say the lug tip to lug tip of 44.1 millimeters. That first bracelet length there is 53 millimeters. And throwing it on the scale on the supplied strap, it weighs 133 grams. So the size on this thing was a little bit of a surprise. 38.5 across here, a little bit larger on the diagonal, but yeah, it doesn't wear as big as I thought, and I think the pretty extreme taper down to 16 on this thing really helps make it feel a little bit smaller on wrist. The length on this thing is kind of hard to measure just because that first link, it is pretty much fixed right in place. The second link does articulate just a little bit, but the bracelet in general doesn't articulate much. So I talked to someone that has a 6 1/4 inch wrist, and they said that it just didn't fit their wrist right. So just something to know. I think down to about 6 1/2, 6 3/4, the bracelet should be fine in my opinion. So yeah, for me, it works great. I like the way that this thing wears. So I'm gonna go outside right now and throw it on the wrist for you. And here we are on my 7 1/2 inch wrist, and as you can see, I think it wears great. It kind of feels like a 39 millimeter watch. That bracelet taper definitely makes it feel smaller than some of the other watches, but you can just see the light play off of the bracelet, off of all the polished accents on the dial, or on the case and the dial, and I mean, it just looks excellent. You can see just how dynamic that dial is. It changes depending on how the light is hitting it. I think it just looks fantastic. The indices really sparkle. The watch definitely looks more premium, more expensive than it is. Obviously, not too many strap options. They do give us one in the box, so I'm going to go throw it on that right now. And here we are. Got some direct sunlight now, and yeah, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. The blue AR just kind of blends in with the blue dial there. But here you can see it on the supplied leather strap. It's actually a pretty decent strap. We'll talk about it in the review. But yeah, that's how it's going to look, and it's not something that I would wear ever, probably. So I'm going to go put this back on the bracelet, and we can get back to this review. So let's talk about the case finishing on this thing. So the case finishing is a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. You can see here on the top of the bezel, you have 6 screws holding this in. They do kind of look like an hourglass logo, which is the Cronos logo there. Something someone else pointed out, that which I don't think is an intentional design cue, but kind of goes with the watch here. But you do have a vertical brushing on the top there. It's nice and straight. Sometimes these things get off center a little bit. This one looks to be pretty straight. And you have that polished bezel accent there. I think it looks very nice. Very nicely done too. The polishing on this watch is done to a high standard. It's nice and smooth, as you can see there. See no ripples or any flaws in it or anything like that. The case itself has a vertical brushing, and again, that's nice and straight. Very coarse brushing, but nice and consistent, linear. It looks really good. The case sides here, horizontal brushing there. You got a screw down signed crown. We'll talk about that in the crown and movement section. And then you have these nice big polished chamfers that are separating those two. Really sharp transitions. I mean, they just look fantastic. The polishing, again, nice and smooth there. Sorry about all the fingerprints there, but yeah, really nice and smooth, as you can see there. Very happy with it. And the whole thing just kind of sparkles when it's on the wrist. So really happy with the case finishing. One thing that I really do appreciate is this bottom chamfer here that is also polished, and that really just kind of softens this bottom edge. That would be a very sharp edge right on the wrist. So the fact that they put that chamfer there, I think it looks good, and it definitely helps with the comfort level on this thing. So the case on this watch, very impressive. Like I said, all those little polished accents really catch the light, and it is a very shiny watch. I'll say that it's a very, very shiny watch. And you can see it next to the Ixtao. The brushing on the Ixtao is just very satinized, very smooth, as you can see there. And the brushing on the Cronos is just very coarse. So just two different styles of brushing. I think both done equally as well, though. And then flipping it over to the case back here, you see you have a circular brush case back, simple notches to get in a tool. That is the PT5000. We're going to test that for sapphire. I'll let you know if it's sapphire right here. But yeah, nice exhibition case back. No text on this at all, which was unusual, but I like it. It's a nice clean look. Yeah, it all looks really good, though. Very happy with the case finishing on this thing. It's pretty impressive. All right, so let's talk about the crystal on this thing. First things first, we'll test it for sapphire. It is positive for sapphire. And it's a dead flat piece of sapphire crystal with heaps and heaps of blue anti-reflective coating on the blue dial. I think it looks great. It's not something that bothers me at all. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of blue AR coating on this thing. So I think some of the other dial colors might suffer a little bit, but the crystal on this thing is excellent. I mean, it's one of those crystals that just kind of disappears in certain lighting. It is fantastic, super clear, as you can see there. I mean, just looks really good. Doesn't really sit up above the bezel much at all. There's just a teeny tiny lip there, but it's a very good crystal. It's sapphire. It's exactly what you want on a watch like this. Yeah, and it just, I mean, it keeps the dial nice and clear. Really lets the light shine through on the dial there, which we'll talk about here in just a second. All right, so let's get real close. We'll talk about the dial on this thing. There's a lot going on this thing. So let's start at the outside here. You have a chapter ring, sloped chapter ring, which looks pretty good. You got little cutouts for each of the indices there. Really nicely done. I think it matches the dial color pretty much spot on. There's certain lights where, like right there, you can see down here, it doesn't quite match the same, but for the most part, I think it looks good and it blends right in. Pretty cohesive coloring, in my opinion. Simple printed minute track around on the outside there. But working our way to the dial, which is, you know, the star of the show, it looks absolutely fantastic. You can see the Cronos logo there, which is not printed. So that's one of the things that I didn't like about the Betamer. You can see how the Betamer is just kind of printed on like a little square section of the dial there. Cronos, they went through the trouble of actually raising the letters of the dial there and printing right on that raised section. So it doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look like an afterthought, kind of like on the Betamer. But really nice. I like the logo on this thing. Simple automatic 100 meters down there at the 6 o'clock. So printing is nice and crisp. The dial texture on this thing, if you are into watches, you're obviously going to know that that is a pretty much one-to-one copy of the Christopher Ward 12 dial. But I think it looks really cool. You can definitely see how in certain lighting the different sides of that cross there play with the light. So it's a pretty dynamic dial, but for the most part, it's just kind of in your face. It's very bright. It's very flashy. I'm going to say that. It's a very flashy dial, not as flashy as the Ixtao for sure. The Ixtao is pretty subtle. This one just kind of changes all sorts of colors depending on which way you look at it. Not colors, but brightness of blues, I'll say. But really happy with it. I think it looks really good. Simple date cut out there at the 3 o'clock position. You do have applied hour indices at all the hour markers, little short one there at the 3 o'clock. Really nicely done though. They're fully polished, they're faceted, they look incredible. They just catch the light, unlike any of these other watches. These ones, they just kind of use flat indices. They don't look bad, but next to the Cronos, they just kind of look a little bland, I'll say. So yeah, this one definitely has that kind of pop and that shine that you want from a watch like this. And sometimes, same with the handset. You can see the handset here, really nice sized handset. You got a brush line right down the middle of each of those and then polished chamfers. And again, they just kind of catch the light like the other hands don't. Really, really happy with it. I like the little pop of red there on the second hand. The second hand is loomed unlike the other two watches. So Yeah, this thing is just great. I love the dial on this thing. It is really, really cool. And like I mentioned earlier, you got Swiss BGW9 Lume on the dial and the hands. Really nice, pure white color during the day. And then at night, I'm going to pop up a Lume shot here. You can see it against the other two watches down there. And it holds its own. It's a nice, even application, that kind of ice blue color. Fades evenly. It looks great. I was able to read this in the middle of the night, just like the other two watches. So yeah, really happy with the Lume on this thing. They did a really good job with it, guys. Okay, so let's talk about the movement and the crown in this thing. So the movement is the Precision Time PT5000. It's a high beat ETA 2824 clone, so 28,800 beats per hour, about 38 hours of power reserve, I think. It hacks, hand winds, it has a bidirectional winding rotor, so you don't get any rotor spinning around. They're great movements. I've had no issues with them. I try not to hand wind them as much as possible because that is a little bit of a fragile mechanism. So yeah, I just give the watch a little shake, and once it starts going, I'll set the time and put it on wrist, and they've been fine. I haven't really had any issues with them at all. Here's how this one has been running. It's running okay. I'd like to see the PT5000 run a little bit better than that. I usually see these things at like plus or minus like 4 seconds. So this one being plus 12, yeah, it could be a little bit better. Still can't complain too much at the price point. But yeah, I'm not really sure whether they're regulating these movements or not. So most of my PT5000s, like I said, have been running a little bit better than this one. But the movement itself, they're great movements. I've had no issues with mine, and I've had plenty of them. This one is operated by a 3 o'clock screw down crown here. Really nicely signed logo there, as you can see. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier or not, but this crown is extremely slick. Super, super slippery. It takes some effort to get it unscrewed. It takes some effort to get it screwed in. The screw in and screw out is pretty smooth, I'll say that. But then there's just like not a whole lot of feedback to it. And that's just because there's no grip on this crown. So this first position here is your hand winding. Like I said, I try not to do that much. Second position is your date window. The date seems pretty much centered in there nicely. Got no issues with that. And then the third position is where you hack the movement. This is where you set the time. Everything functions as it should. So no issues there. The crown threading is something that I have noticed. It takes a couple tries to get it in, so usually I wind it back until I feel it kind of seat in the threads, and then I screw it in. And that way I know I'm not cross-threading this thing, and like I said, there's like no feedback through the crown because there's no grip on it, so it's kind of hard to tell if you're going to cross-thread this or not. So just something you got to take some care with that. It is one of those crowns where you're not winding the movement while you're screwing it in, so that's nice to see. So you're just feeling the threads, which is a big bonus for this watch because you're not getting the resistance from the movement, and you're able to screw it in fairly decently. Yeah, this is something that I'd like them to address. I'm not really sure what else they could do to this thing. Maybe if they just brushed and made these corners a little bit sharper, if they just brushed the case and did that, it might be a little bit better. But it's a nice looking crown, just a pain in the butt to work with. But that's pretty much the biggest complaint with this watch. Okay, so let's talk about the bracelet in this thing. So the bracelet is another place where people are going to have some issues with it. I removed 0 links for my 7.5-inch wrist. So if you have a bigger wrist than mine, you are going to be wearing this thing super tight. I would suggest talking to Cronos and getting some extra links if you have a bigger wrist than 7.5 inches. But other than that, it's actually not a bad bracelet. You can definitely see it doesn't articulate like the other bracelets. It's more of like a bangle, someone said. It's more of a bangle than a, that's as much as I can squish it there. That's as much as I can squish it there. So if you have smaller wrists, it's going to be a little bit of an odd fit for you. Unlike these watches here, these ones, they will just kind of conform to your wrist like any normal bracelet. So yeah, it's just something to consider. I think if you're above like 6.5, you should be fine, and it's going to look fine. It's going to wear fine on you. So yeah, that's just something to consider. Like I mentioned earlier, I believe it's like 23.5 millimeters at this first link, and it tapers down to 16 millimeters at a butterfly clasp. There's no half links, there's no micro adjust. You do have screw pins for adjusting there, as you can see. I had no issues removing some of these ones. I kind of moved some links from one side to the other just to make it fit on my wrist a little bit better. So yeah, I had no issues with those. So they are solid links, they're flat links. They really do play with the light very nicely, as you can see, as you would expect from a flat link bracelet. A vertical brushing on the links themselves, they match the case perfectly. It has a nice polished chamfer there, which also matches with the case nicely. The bottom edge of these nice and rounded off. So comfort wise, this watch is actually pretty comfortable for being such an angular watch. I was a little afraid of the comfort, but they smoothed down this bottom edge here. They smoothed down the bottom edge of the bracelets itself. So overall, it's been very comfortable. You can see little polished accents on the middle links here. So you do get a little bit of a shine from those, which looks really good. I think they did a very nice job. Working our way to the clasp here, you do have a signed Cronos butterfly clasp. These buttons here, nice and rounded, so they don't really dig into the wrist. I hate butterfly clasps. This one is a pretty decent one. So yeah, I can't complain too much. It's one of those ones where it doesn't matter which way you latch it, it'll latch either way. So I'm happy to see that. The tolerances on it are pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of wiggle there, but it doesn't really translate to bracelet rattle or anything like that. So yeah, I think overall the bracelet on this thing, pretty darn good, especially considering the style of it. These things can be a little bit sharp and this one's not. So yeah, I'm overall very satisfied with it. I will point out a little bit of a machining inconsistency right here. That's really the only, these two links here, they have a little spot that's just a little bit different than the rest of the watch. Unfortunate, because that's where you see it the most. But other than that, the machining on this was pretty consistent, pretty even all the way through, even on the watch head. So yeah, it's probably just a one-off issue for me. I'm glad I got it and you guys didn't get, or aren't going to get it. But yeah, just something to note. Even then, it's not something I notice at all the angles. It's just certain angles you can definitely see that something's off there a little bit. But that's pretty much it for the bracelet. Sorry guys, I forgot to mention the included strap. So this one does come in the box, as of right now at least. And it's actually a pretty decent strap. It's a leather strap there. You can see decent stitching there that fits in that first link. You guys saw this in my strap show, or my wrist shot section. It's actually a pretty decent strap. It smells good. It feels good. Yeah, the buckle is actually pretty decent as well. Just a fully brushed buckle there, but it's not flopping around or anything like that. So pretty nicely done. One floating keeper and one stationary keeper. The stitching all nicely done. The big issue with this thing is getting it on the watch. The screws that they provide you are very small. I'm popping up a picture right now. So yeah, I wish they would send a couple more, just because I almost lost these things. They were a pain in the butt. It's easier, I would say, to get it back on the bracelet than it is to get it on this strap. So it's not something that I enjoyed the look of very much. So this isn't something that I'm going to put back on the watch. But if you are into leather straps on these types of watches, then this one's actually not too bad. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. So there you go, guys. That is the Cronos Skyline. I think the big competition is these two watches right here. I will say still, the PRX Engineer is probably the most impressive Chinese watch that I have in my collection, and that still holds true. It just feels a little bit more solid. The brushing and the polishing, I think, is done to just a slightly higher standard. But I will say, any of these watches are great. You're going to like them. If you want this integrated bracelet kind of sports watch, all three of these are great options for you. I think this one is kind of like the most subdued. This one is the most flashy and kind of in your face. And then this one's kind of somewhere in between. So I feel a little weird when I'm wearing this into the office with some nicer, casual but work outfit, where I don't feel the same about these two. So this one I've been wearing a lot with just a t-shirt and shorts. And yeah, it just kind of pops in the sun. It pops in all the lighting, and it just looks really good. It's very flashy, and sometimes I want that, sometimes I don't. So yeah, I think you're going to kind of have to decide what you want. I do think that this thing has the most wow factor, though. So if you're looking for something that'll make people say, holy shit, then yeah, this is probably the watch for you. And it is cheaper than these other two watches, so that's nice to see. And the quality, it's right up there. When I say this is the nicest watch, it's probably by like 10%. So it's not something that you're really going to notice unless you have them side by side. The quality on this watch is great. And yeah, I have no major complaints with it. So something else I wanted to note before I get into this review is the packaging. They included a pretty nice package. So you get this outer box here, you get some tools here, which are encased in a little plastic tube, and then you get an actual watch roll, which is kind of nice. It's nice and soft and fuzzy on the inside. Yeah, it's nothing fancy, but this is more than you're getting from other places. So I just wanted to throw that in there. You're getting a really nice full package for your money here. So yeah, really happy with it. All right, let's get back into the review. I think you're going to like it as much as I do, so I think that's it for me. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.